So just before I introduce Barbara, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the land on which we meet today and recognise their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. I pay my respects to them and their cultures and to elders both past and present and any Indigenous people with us today. So Barbara, thanks for joining us today. Barbara's from the Victorian Trades Hall Council. I think Will Stark is going to join us. Oh, there she is. She's online today. So thanks, Will. I know you were having some internet problems earlier. Your microphone's turned off, Will, but I'll turn that on for you.
That's okay. Thank you, Gary. Yes.
Okay, that's not a great connection there, Will. It's lagging a fair bit. We might hand over to Barbara to present. Her connection was a lot better. All right, well, with that, Barbara is the project coordinator for the Women on Site at Victorian Trades Hall Council. Barbara has over 30 years experience working in the not-for-profit, native title and local government organisations. During this time, she has worked at all levels of service development and delivery, from direct service provision to strategic and corporate planning and governance. So thanks for making time to join us today, Barbara.
Thanks so much for inviting me. And I can't see everyone's faces, but I'm sure that you're all fired up on a fabulously freezing cold, Victorian, well, Melbourne, I should say, Friday. And yes, the internet connection in Carlton is apparently really crap, but I'm here at home in Kensington and it's really good. So thank you for this opportunity. So as Gary said, I'm the project lead for what's actually called the jobs team, and within the jobs team we have two projects, and I'm just going to give a bit of an overview about both, and then charging to Women on Site. And as Gary mentioned, I really, questions about how these projects can support and resource the work that you do and how you do it, that we can provide is part of the conversation that I really want to have as part of today. So back before we knew COVID was a thing, the Minister, Gail Tierney, did a world kind of tour with some people around looking at what strategies are in place around the world to stop the bleed of apprenticeships out of the workforce, and on return funded 5 projects. The Victorian Trades Hall Council was funded 2 of these, recognising that trade unions are at the forefront of creating a safe and respectful workplace, and also inclusive jobs. And these projects are particularly targeting people that weren't necessarily in numbers involved or engaged in the apprenticeship or traineeship system. They are both research projects, so we exist to test strategies and to test ideas. And what happens if you remove really simple, what might be considered quite simple barriers for people? Is there a better outcome? As I said, there's 2 projects. There's Women on Site, which is the one I'm going to talk about today, but we also have another one which is called Job Readiness and Pathways, and it's around getting people to the start line, and particularly groups like long-term unemployed, First Nations people, people leaving the criminal justice system, women who do want to get into trades, and asylum seekers, refugees. And both projects have steering committees, and those steering committees are both made up of unions, employer groups, so employer groups like VECI, AI. The AI group is involved with Women on Site, master builders, master plumbers we've got relationships with. So we work, and other people across the industry. So we work across the gamut of who's involved in getting people jobs, all with the same desired outcome, which is good, safe and respectful workplaces and jobs of apprentices or traineeship or trainees that last the time and that have a really good experience and stay in the system, so stay in employment once actually qualified. So in relation to women on site, why we exist, historically, Australia's actually got one of the most gendered workforces in the world in terms of where men work and where women work and where other gender diverse folk work. It is really kind of strict and strained. Less than 2% of women in across all trades except hospitality and hairdressing. So and that figure hasn't changed in over 20 years. Even if apprenticeship numbers have gone up, the percentage of those apprentices or trainees hasn't actually increased. And our solution around the pilots is looking at an end-to-end process, and I'll talk a bit about what that means. What's really clear to say up front is we are not an employer, we are not an employment project. We're about saying, where are the barriers? We wouldn't exist if these people were actively engaged in the employment systems for traineeships and apprenticeships. So what's missing for them to actively participate? So what we want to achieve, it's quite simple. 50 women take up apprenticeships in historically male-dominated trades, and that we research end-to-end the pilots around what those women's experience is when they are given the kinds of direct support and resourcing that these pilots do, which I'm going to talk about again in a second. So we've partnered with Melbourne University to undertake that, that research, and we think that some of it will actually, some of what we would have been recommending has possibly been answered by some of the economic recovery strategies already put into place because of COVID, but a lot of them aren't, because a lot of them are really simple. And one of the things that we've become really aware of is that people have a lot of information about what's happening in their own space, but very little information about what's happening in other spaces. So the fact that the Building Industry Consultative Committee exists at a government level, most people don't know about, let alone that it has a gender equity and a really strong building equality strategy around the construction industry with a lot of money. So the 4 pilots that we have, that strategy I just talked about in building equality identified that there are 3 really key areas where women are actively excluded, whether it's by themselves or by processes that don't recognise that maybe they need a slightly different approach to others. And those 3 things are in even attracting women to trades, the amount of women that don't think these trades are an option for them, because even they believe that they're only jobs for others. There's the recruitment. So once a woman's actually interested, what are the recruitment strategies? And I could tell you horror stories that we hear regularly and recently about recruitment strategies of in trades that actively discriminate against women. And that's everything from questions like, did you grow up hanging out in the workshop with your dad? There are so many things wrong with that statement. Not everyone has a father. Not everyone grows up in a house where there's a workshop. Not everyone has a father who knows how to pick up a tool. Often it might be, if there are boys in the family, they are the ones that are hanging out in the workshop. Like, there are so many things wrong with that question, right through to only a few weeks ago, what's a pretty girl like you want to get dirty for? These things are still happening. Recruitment and retention. So how do you retain people? How do you make sure that workplaces are safe and respectful places for women to be, where they are not expected to do twice the work for half the outcome to continually prove themselves? And that's a really important space for GTOs, where in the life of an apprenticeship, an apprentice might have 4 different host employers. So it actually is like starting from scratch, you know, each time. So our pilots go across those. And the first one, which is around promoting and attracting, is around normalising women in trades. And that pilot has things like a website, there's social media. I don't know if you've had a look at our website, but it's cracking. It's a great website. The social media sites on Instagram has a lot of traffic. Twitter, not as much, and Facebook is getting more traction every day. We have posters and stickers and merch and, you know, things. We have hard hats. The hard hats are for the actual women who get jobs. They get a hard hat with which is branded Women on Site. Pilot 2, which is about the same in attraction, we have come and try an industry days. And I was mentioning to Gary before here, so we've held a come and try day, for instance, with VU TAFE. There was carpentry, plumbing and electrical. We have women tradies in each of those areas. We have the TAFE teachers teaching. People get their hands on tools. Some of the questions we get are fabulous. Some of them we did not expect at all. And from like that VU day, for instance, over half of the women have gone on to enrol in pre-apprenticeships. Some of them decided trade wasn't for them, and some of them decided that the trade they thought they wanted is not what they wanted. So they came in thinking carpentry and then fell in love with being an electrician. So it means that women are getting a choice to kind of get in a workshop, get their hands on tools, hear about the industries before committing to the pre-apprenticeship, taking up the space and potentially using up their free TAFE space. And industry days are things like introduction to the electrical industry. We had over 100 women registered to attend a morning at the ETU, the Electrical Trades Union, which had to be cancelled at 24 hours notice because of lockdown, which was really sad. There were 8 different women sparkies across all of the different electrical industries that we're going to talk about their bits, because that's the other thing. People don't know that to be an electrician isn't just about changing light globes in a house. You can work in hydroelectricity, you can work in the tunnels that are currently being built and rail. So that's been great, but also getting out to TAFEs and talking to current students. Introduction to the trades, which is around ensuring recruitment practices include and remove barriers. So we've done some work. Will Strike, who isn't able to be online because of terrible internet connection, is actually on that big building equality subcommittee, and working with master builders have developed a suite of template policies around recruitment strategies that don't exclude women without you realising you're actually excluding women. So we talk around some of that, what recruitment looks like, and we're able to do a whole range of work before someone even gets to you. So pilot 3 is around the actual pre-apprenticeship. So we are testing, is there a different outcome for women in trades if you run a women-only pre-apprenticeship? So the Centre for You and Homeschooling have partnered to run 2 pre-apprenticeship projects in electrotech for women only. Sadly, one of them needed to be postponed or cancelled because of these lockdowns, but we've got one ready to go in September, and then they'll do one at the start of next year. And that's for women that might be really interested, but are not sure about going into a mixed class, recognising there are a whole lot of women that we've spoken to who want to go into a mixed class because that's what the work environment looks like. But like I say, these are pilots. So we're testing strategies around what works and whether things work or not. And that's really important. We're also, for pilot 4, is we can work and are working directly with employers and with Holmes Glen again, piloting the idea of Trades Hall developed on behalf of the BIC with funds from the BIC, this is the Building Industry Consultative Committee, specific training called Safe and Respectful Workplaces that actually looks at gendered violence and what equality means and what it looks like to have work sites that have women as per from a rights basis. So from the fact that gendered violence is in fact a crime and legislated against in the Work Cover Act. So we take it from what we're doing with TAFE, we're doing it next week, in fact, with Holmes Glen, is around the trade teachers understanding what they need to be aware of is happening in their classrooms, and any kind of behaviours that they need to stop in the classroom, because when those people go on to become tradies, if they behave like that in the workforce, their employers can actually face pretty significant fines and restrictions through work cover. So we're trialling it with the TAFEs, and we're really keen to trial that training with employers as well. We've had some conversations with Apprenticeships Victoria to do that training for all ASOs, and we've had some conversations with a couple of different GTOs. I think I saw Wayne on the list because I can't see faces. I don't know if Wayne's here, but we've certainly been talking to Westvic about the idea of field officers also undertaking that training, so that when a woman, or if a woman comes to you and says, this is happening on the work site, people actually know what to look for, because it's not a given. We don't all know this stuff. So as I was saying, how we deliver, we promote project and opportunities via the social media. We visit TAFEs of those where there are currently women undertaking pre-apps or talking with ASOs, talking to anyone really that wants to talk to us. We provide one-on-one assistance to women to identify the kind of trade they're interested in. We've got the Try Trade and Introduction Days, working directly with employers. The Safe and Respectful Workplaces training this week has been piloted across the Footscray Hospital site as a demonstration site with Multiplex and all its subbies. We identify those women that are eligible to also undertake the Job Readiness Project, which is the other project, but that has a series of modules around your responsibilities at work, your rights and responsibilities as an apprentice, what is a union and what can they do for you in your industry, how you put together resumes, what resume protocols look like, cover letters. We do mock interviews, we do all those kinds of things. We work with women to do the UIs on the Apprenticeships Victoria. We take them to the GTO websites and particularly AEN to start to show them how to job search opportunities. We remove barriers, really practical ones, like someone gets a pre-apprenticeship, they've got to get to work, they don't have a car. We provide them with a $500 prepaid Myki or Visa, so they don't have to worry about or stress about their travel for the first 6 months, like they can do that. We buy people, if women have to have their PPE in their pre-app, we can buy that for them. We can pay for the materials part, the non-free part of a pre-app. So we have an allocation of up to a couple of $1,000s for each woman, where we just take away some of those financial barriers. And as I said, we collect information about their experience for the research. Where we're at. So we've held Try a Trade days at Victoria Uni TAFE and at a place called the Maker Community, which is a community space in Brunswick where tradespeople can operate from. We have 4 more planned for this year. We are going to be doing something at Whittlesea Community Centre, which has got a huge workshop that used to be a school. Bendigo TAFE, we're going to get back and have another crack at the Introduction to the Industry Day for the electrical industry. We're also doing the same kind of thing at PICAC, which is the Plumbing Industry Centre, Climate Action Centre, which is a partnership between the Master Plumbers, the Sprinkler Something Association, the Plumbers Union, who all actually have an amazing facility in Brunswick around climate action. So we're doing that as well. And there's a potential for another one by the end of the year. We've visited TAFEs and spoken with, it says 8, it's actually 7 at this point, but we've got one booked in for next week. We speak with women who are already engaged in pre-apps, and we see how they're going in their pre-apps. We sign them onto the project, they get the extra support to get them through. As I said, we need to get 50 women jobs. So because of that, or support 50 women into jobs, because of that, we need more than 50 participants, which we already have. The research is underway. The pre-apps that I talked about with the Centre for You, and Victoria Unitafe in their upcoming carpentry, plumbing and electrical are partnering with Women Can and a whole range of other organisations to hold 5 places in each of those for women. So another way of, if we get like a quarter of the students in a class being women, do they have a better outcome than if it's just one? How we work with AV, as I said, Apprenticeships Victoria is on both steering committees. We have regular meetings and referrals. We step participants through that web page. And we can provide the respectful workplaces training. We have a trainer in our team who is actually we've pinched him from Kangan for a while, and he's a trade teacher, but he is our trainer who's doing the respectful workplaces training with Homesglen next week, and is available to roll that out. And this is proper training out of the Occ Health and Safety Unit. He just happens to be based in our team with field officers and GTOs. What can you do? So for GTOs and TAFEs, I think it's really important to actually understand the government's procurement targets and commitments in relation to women, not only in the big build, but also the big housing build. The big housing build's got some pretty interesting targets. And there's the health build. All 3 things between them, tens of billions of dollars going out into the community. All of them have trainee or apprenticeship hours that are dedicated and must include women. All of them have different recruitment processes. Only the big build has Apprenticeships Victoria as the feeder, but it's not unlikely that you'll get a big company, whether it be Lendlease or Multiplex, not so much in the hospital space, but certainly the housing space. Some of those tier 1 and 2 companies are going to look at tendering for a hospital, for instance, and go, okay, we need 8 women. And they'll literally knock on your door and say, can you give us 8 women? Because they're not necessarily able to find them or put the time into doing it themselves. So I'd say really understand what the procurement targets are, that anyone who contracts any of the money out of the Victorian government, because there is compliance against it, and if they don't comply with certain social procurement, they won't get future work. And there are penalties involved now that has never been before, because if you understand what those host employers need, you are better able to go and say, we can give this to you, we can do this. You're really well placed to sell's the wrong word, but to promote that as something that you can do for hosts. Review your own recruitment practices, ensure they don't exclude women. That sounds really obvious, but it's actually really tricky. We have access, for instance, to the Master Builders templates, policy and kind of procedural templates around how you can ensure that it's not blind recruitment, but it's recognising that there are some age-old recruitment models or ways that maybe are actively excluding people. Use the resources available, like find out about the Building Industry Consultative Committee's strategy. Google Women in Construction Victoria strategy. It's a very, very good strategy, and it even though it relates to the all components of construction. It does include things like manufacturing and the supply chain. And so the Safe and Respectful Workplaces training usually costs, where you contract to the training unit, come out and do it. We're offering that to anyone that actually, particularly GTOs in this space, if you employ women and a number of women into historically male-dominated trades, we will come out and provide this training to your people for free. We will come out, we will make sure your field officers or your management or whoever you think needs it understands what this means for them in the real world, in practice. We have current examples happening at a federal government level of people maybe not understanding what to look for when matters are raised. So it's not just about people raising matters, it's about understanding what the context and what to look for in a broader scope, and that training can assist with that. It's half a day, like it's a couple of hours for the basic. That is really a pretty brief overview of the world, but like I said, our purpose is to get women into jobs, into apprenticeships or traineeships, but to track them through the research to see what in those pilots work and what doesn't. So we're not a job provider, we're not an employer, we are funded to track and support women and to provide the kind of, I keep saying, because I do mosaics, the glue and the mosaic stuff is that there are whole pictures, but there are places where the joining kind of glue or cement is missing, and we're able to do those really, really basic things. And yeah, I just wanted to spend the last time that we had together, the last bit of time that we have together, to talk about any questions or any resources that you might think you need, but you don't know if it exists. It can, send you off into the right directions.
Thanks, Barbara. I have turned everyone's microphone so they can be turned on. At the moment you're muted, but if you click on the mic, it will turn on for you. If you've got any specific questions for Barbara, now's a great opportunity. While they're thinking about that, Barbara, I had two things. So certainly from an association perspective, we might be able to run a Respectful Workplaces training session in our offices and get various GTOs around Metro Melbourne to come to one location. So maybe we can talk about a date that works for you, and we've got a venue that can hold sort of 15, 20 people in a COVID safe way. So we might be able to do that. And then also your pre-apps. So if you've got any further details on the exact dates and locations, I know we've got members who'd certainly be keen to look at potential candidates from those programs as they've got opportunities that come up. So again, if you could email us through a set of dates and locations and programs that are running, we'll make sure that we circulate that to the full network right across the state. As you say, outside of the big build stuff we're doing with Apprenticeships Victoria, social housing is going to be, a large program that's running right across the state. So most regional towns are going to have some sort of social housing construction phase over the next few years. So we'd certainly be keen to get all of our members right across the state involved in that. I see Helene's got her hand up, so I'll let Helene take the floor and ask a question. Go for it.
Thanks, Gary. Hi, Barbara.
Hi.
I just wanted to ask, obviously with the work with getting the women into the trades, some of the issues that are come across in talking to the female apprentices is more on how to change the I suppose the traditional employers, being male in those trades, their perception of women in the trades as well, and their capabilities. I find that there's probably more, there are women out there who do want to get into these trades, but it's finding employers that change, you know, their attitude in the workplace to the capability of, you know, women to be actually, you know, able to undertake those trades. Is there anything sort of being done along those lines with training, you know, with the employers and those sorts of things as well?
Yeah, Helene, thank you for that question. Gary, can you, not being a Teams person, can you show me how I can see everyone instead of still seeing my presentation?
You should be able to turn that off, but I haven't actually given everyone access to turn on their cameras, but let me do that.
Okay.
If people, I'll allow it so they can. Some people may not want to turn on their cameras, but there we go. There's Helene.
That's right. I'm just, not being a Teams person, I'm unclear how I get rid of my presentations, like stop sharing and.
We'll do that for you, Barbara. Hang on a second.
You're a legend. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. You'll need to do it. Go back up to the top arrow that we started with in the top right-hand corner. And then just go, so turn off the presenter mode.
So screen, do I go to window? I don't want to muck this up for anyone. Nope.
Yep. Oh, there we
Okay. Look at that.
Screen.
Many of the unions that have, so most particularly tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 employers, particularly across construction, will have EBAs with relevant unions around the work that they do. And many of the unions are doing a lot of work in this space through their EBA negotiations. It is an interesting one for two reasons for me. One is that, and this is about changing the face of what apprentices look like. It's one of the reasons the website exists. It's one of the reasons why we have a massive billboard on the corner of Lygon and Victoria Streets at the moment of a woman Sparky, not doing anything apart from being a Sparky, but just to show that is that the very employers that still have this view about what an apprentice looks like are the ones that aren't able to attract or keep apprentices. You know, we know that the fallout rate was 50 up until 2019 was apprenticeships had halved in 5 years, and less than half of those are finishing. So the traditional kind of gene pool, if you like, of who apprentices were, and I come from a family of the men in my family, fitter and turner and a welder, even they recognise that, you know, the industry is changing and must change. So the unions are doing some work around that. The places like Master Builders Association is doing work with their members around it. The Vecchi, through their work with members, are doing some work around it in that residential space. So there's bits and pieces of work happening, particularly in Victoria, across the BICC membership and stakeholders. But there's no doubt it's an ongoing issue. If it wasn't, we wouldn't exist.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm just even talking to some employers who I know have been able to get, or they seem to employ a few more apprentices and female, having conversations with them as into how they change that perception. And, you know, one for an example is an electrical one, but they actually have with their female lady in HR, her goal was to, you know, obviously get more female apprentices across the board, but and I asked her what her biggest hurdle was, but it was changing I suppose the mentality of their supervisors that were actually recruiting, and the comments that they were making in the interviews, even like, you know, like you said about being too good looking for this, you know, for this kind of work, or you know, just their skill set. But one of them, she had an example that, you know, other than that she was too good looking for the site, that she interviewed the best compared to all the males that actually participated in the interview, and she's turned out to be one of their best employers, and now they've got this bit of a process, and they've she said it's taken a number of years, but changed the perception of how good women can actually be in the workplace, in their trades, and that was an electrical one, for example, but she had they were more conscientious with their paperwork, they were more time efficient, better organised, all these sorts of things, and it's taken quite a while for them to get that. But I suppose it's changing, and not so much the businesses in the unions where they have more support and assistance, but the smaller businesses that don't actually, aren't involved in unions and don't have that support. Changing those, especially in regional areas where it's not as heavily, unionised and so forth, and it's a lot of smaller businesses, changing that concept in the regional areas to get those women into trades.
And that's where something like the master builders comes in, because a lot of those particular residential builders out in the regions that are doing some of the social housing builds or doing some of the big estates up around Bendigo or Wangaratta and in those areas, they're generally members of the master builders. So who I was saying have actively and been funded, in fact, to create some resources for their people, for those smaller businesses around what it looks like. And we're looking to partner. I mean, we already partner with them in terms of they're on our steering committee, and Will Stark, who's listening but who's got dodgy internet, can't participate, is actively, we have a lot of communication with master builders, and we're looking at what we might be able to do to roll that training and those kind of sessions out for those small builders in a way that is, some people take it as really threatening. It's not. It's actually not a health and safety issue in terms of once they employ and how they employ, and it shouldn't be considered too much. It actually, I'd kind of like someone to do a cost benefit analysis of for women to get an apprenticeship. They are very clear generally about that that's what they want to do. They're not just falling into it because dad was one or because it seems like an easy option at the time, and secondary schools guide young men over that way. The fact that over half of those that started finish, don't complete before second year, that's a big investment for companies to make, to have no return. So it would be interesting to see what the return is for when they get people who are more likely to finish. It's not research that we're doing, but be good for someone to do. So yeah, it really is through those employer industry associations that some of that work is happening as well. But I appreciate what you're saying. It's a tough gig out there.
Yeah,
and it'd certainly be good from our perspective to start to put together a few case studies on some of the benefits and raising awareness, and again, some good news stories where we've had some really good results. So again, just trying to promote best practices out there generally, I think will help.
And I think your Apprentice of the Year is a really good example at the minute. The current Apprentice of the Year is a plumber. She's a woman. She's trained through a TAFE. She's employed through Westvic, through a GTO. Like there are really good examples out there right now that you can be using.
Yeah. I see Narelle's got her hand up. Go for it, Narelle.
Thanks, Gary, and thanks, Barbara. Just a quick one. I'm based in Ballarat, and I'm helping the Women's Health Grampians Group. We've got a couple of project workers that are working with they're calling the core high vis team, and I'm part of the reference group where we're looking at the recruitment and retention of women in non-traditional trades. The training that you mentioned, Barbara, and the possibilities of that, is that something that can be extended out to the regional areas? It's certainly something that I know that we would love to tap into in Ballarat if we could.
It's our absolute goal to extend it out to the regional areas. We've already done some work in Warrnambool with Gunda Jamiring, the traditional owner group down there. We're doing a trade day up in Bendigo in July. We've already been up to Wodonga TAFE to talk with them about stuff. We've got someone from Gippsland TAFE on our steering committee. we absolutely, and I know about those two projects. Thank you for mentioning them. They're really interesting approach to this work. We can certainly do that. There is no issue. So my contact, I think everyone's being supplied with the presentation, and my email and phone number is on the last page of that.
Fabulous. Thanks, Barbara.
As a follow-up to this presentation today, we're catching up with Barbara next week. So we'll finalise all the dates and locations, and we'll certainly make sure that we circulate that to all members as well over the next week or so. Okay. Is there any more questions that people have for Barbara?
Narelle's got one. No?
We just spoke with Narelle. She may have a second one. I'm not sure. She's put her hand down quickly.
Thanks. All done.
All right. Look, as I mentioned, the presentations will be available next week. We're happy to forward on Barbara's contact details if you need to before that. We're certainly keen to be a little bit more proactive in this space and tap into a lot of the pre-apprenticeship programs that are being offered around the state to make sure that the members have got more candidates that they can sort of put forward to host employers. We really appreciate the work that you're doing in this space, Barbara, and look forward to working with you going forward.
Thank you so much, and have a great day. Stay safe out there.